So I jotted down a couple shilas. I wanted to start off by making a clarification, and I want to probably rectify something I said wrong last week. So there were two people loyal listeners that wrote in, that they called me. It happens to be it was Elon and Elon Jeff and Ellie Reader. I was very happy that they did. So I wanted to clarify one point because I definitely made an error. So last week I was talking about Panim Chadash. So I mentioned that if you don't have Panim Chadash at a Sheva Brachas, you don't say all of them, you just say the last one. That's true. And then I mentioned a story. Now the story that I mentioned was that at my house once we couldn't get Panim Chadashes, so we didn't do all of Sheva Brachas. Now I thought the story, and I said the story happened on a Friday night. Now here's the problem. It did not happen on a Friday night because the halacha is, as brought down in Shulchan Aruch, you do not need Panim Chadashes on Friday night because Friday night is the Panim Chadashes. So I was thinking to myself, so they pointed that out, which I appreciate. By the way, Shabbos day also don't need Panim Chadashes. Shalashuddis is a machloikis. According to the Shulchan Aruch, you need Panim Chadashes. According to the Ramami Panu, a big Mekubal, you don't. And basically the way we paskin is like the Shulchan HaEzer. The Shulchan HaEzer says that for Shalashuddis, you don't need Panim Chadashes if you say Torah. So if you have Shabbos with Torah, that's the Panim Chadashes. So I was racking my brain. So what was the story? Okay, so the story was as follows. Friday night we had Sheva Brachas, and I couldn't get Panim Chadashes. So they were talking about what do you do if there's no Panim Chadashes. So I said in general this, but we ended up making it because it was Friday night. What ended up happening was a different Maisa. Different Maisa was, it was a second Sheva Brachas on a Friday night. We couldn't get a minyan. That's what it was. It wasn't we couldn't get Panim Chadashes. We were stuck at 8. And I was going down the street and I couldn't get a minyan. And that's when there's no minyan, you don't say anything. So that was the case. I just wanted to clarify that point. It wasn't a lack of Panim Chadashes. That was one story, but we ended up just going with it because you don't need Panim Chadashes Friday night. The difference is that we didn't have a minyan. And that was the story. So I just wanted to clarify that point because Friday night you do not need Panim Chadashes. So anyone that I confused, I apologize about that. Okay. A couple of things I want to run through. The first two shilas are related to Chanukah, just because I got asked this the last 2 days. We shouldn't know from these shilas, but it's good to clarify them. You know them now, and then Bez Hashem, we never have to know them practically. And that is two shilas regarding to Avelos and Chanukah. Now, the first shilah could be related to all of us, and that is, are you allowed to go to a cemetery on Chanukah? So there's two reasons why a person would go to a cemetery. First of all, you have a family member, like a yard site. People go to their family members on a yard site. And secondly, you want to go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Kevi, you want to go to a tzaddik, the Rimnitzer, you want to go to a tzaddik. So I've been told from people, you don't go to cemeteries on Chanukah. You don't go on Rosh Chodesh, you don't go on Chanukah. But I've also seen that there's a lot of people at the aisle on Chanukah, and there's a lot of people on Rosh Chodesh. So what's the story? So let me read you a few lines from the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai writes in Parshas Vayeshev Oischav Beis, B'Chanukah ein holchem lebeis hakvaris b'yom yard site. We do not go to the cemetery on a yard site. For a regular family member, you do not go to the cemetery on a yard site on Chanukah. Umi sheyesh lo yard site b'toichim ei Chanukah yelech koydem Chanukah. And if you have a yard site on Chanukah, go before or go after. Do not go on Chanukah. Now, why? The reason is very simple. You're supposed to have a certain level of joy on Chanukah, and going to a cemetery could lead you to crying, it could lead to sadness. So the Ben Ish Chai is saying, don't go to the cemetery on Chanukah. By the way, not just Chanukah, it will be Rosh Chodesh, or any day you don't say Tachanun. But then says the Ben Ish Chai, but you're allowed to go to the kever of a tzaddik. So a personal family member on a yard site, he says not. But kivrei tzaddikim is fine, because kivrei tzaddikim there's always a purpose, and that's to daven and to have them be meils yosher for you. And the Ben Ish Chai says that's the minik in Baghdad. We go on Chanukah. So the Ben Ish Chai is saying that we go for kivrei tzaddikim, but not for personal kvaris to the cemetery on Chanukah or Rosh Chodesh. But I just want to clarify, this is not so pashut. The Gesher Achayim, when it comes to Avelos, the Gesher Achayim was Rav Yechiel Michal Tukaczynski. He was like the Poisek in Eretz Yisrael in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, the 30s and 40s. So the Rav Yechiel Michal Tukaczynski writes this in Gesher Achayim Perek Chav Tes Halacha Hey. He says as follows: Kosva Kolboy v'Beragoyla. The Kolboy and the Beragoyla say, Ein leilach beis hakvaris gam b'Rosh Chodesh. We do not go to the cemetery on Rosh Chodesh or Chanukah. L'fi zeh hu adin loy b'Chanukah. Right? You don't go on Chanukah. You don't go on Rosh Chodesh. Ukayoim noyagim leleches lebeis hakvaris gam b'Rosh Chodesh v'gam b'Chanukah. But the minhag nowadays is to go on Chanukah and Rosh Chodesh. So basically the Gesher Chaim is saying, while I understand what the Ben Ish Chai is saying, the minhag is to go. So just to summarize this second shaila, are you allowed to go to a cemetery on Chanukah? Kivrei tzadikim for sure, yes. But if it's a family member, because a lot of times people have off from Chanukah, so they're like, okay, it's convenient. I have a yard set around now, or I want to see my parents, I want to see my grandparents. So the Ben Ish Chai says not to, but the Gesher Chaim says the minhag is to. So it's fine. So that would be the end of that. So it's the same thing. So Chol Moed would be the same thing that the Ben Ish Chai would tell you not to. But the Gesher Chaim seems to be mekel. But I think with Chol Moed more people avoid. Yeah, but it happens to be. Listen, Kivrei Tzadikim they go. Kivrei Tzadikim people go. Personal one, I think it would be totally in the Shaila. It would be totally in the Shaila with you. No, any day you don't say Tachana. Correct. But that's why the minhag is to go. That's my point. The minhag is to go even on days that you don't say Tachana. The only days that we don't go is Shabbos and Yom Tiv to check Chol Moed. Chol Moed I have to check. Erev Shabbos after Chatzos, a lot of people don't go. But the truth is, people go to the Kivrei Tzadikim at that time also. Kivrei Tzadikim, outside of Shabbos and Yom Tov, they're going to go every single time, basically. Okay, the third shaila, this I was asked yesterday, and that is, can someone during the year of mourning, can they go to a Chanukah party? Chanukah mesibah. So there's a couple types of Chanukah parties I want to talk about. There's three types. There's your family Chanukah party, that you have your yearly family Chanukah party. There's like a friends Chanukah. Do people do friends Chanukah parties? I think it's more family at this point. Friendsgiving. So they do a friends Chanukah party. And the third one, and that's the most, is going to be the most lenient, is a teacher will sometimes throw like a mesibah in the school. Like the school will have like a Chanukah party for the students. So I just want to talk about the first one. You have a family Chanukah party or a friends Chanukah party. Are you allowed to go to a Chanukah party? The truth is, so Rav Moshe Feinstein in Igris Moshe Yeridei Chelik Gimel Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, he says the following two lines: L'gabe Sudas Chanukah, regarding a person in mourning going to a Chanukah party or a Chanukah meal, Misha Oisa Suda Eina Sudas Mitzvah. You're not obligated to have a meal on Chanukah, right? You're not obligated to have a meal on Chanukah. It's not like Purim, right? That's the famous Mishabura. Is that? I'm saying you're not obligated to have a meal in general on Chanukah. It's not a Sudas Mitzvah, and therefore any Chanukah party or any Chanukah meal is not a mitzvah, and therefore. You're not allowed to go. Meaning, Ramesh is saying, listen, someone in mourning does not go to a party and doesn't go to a large meal. Your reason to go is that it's a mitzvah. And Ramesh is saying, it's not really a mitzvah. A Sudas Chanukah is not a requirement. And therefore you're not supposed to go. And he says, V'gam l'Sudas eza ad moirim b'Chanukah ein leilach. And Ramesh says, if you're a chassid and you want to go to your Rebbe's Chanukah lighting, Chanukah party, also don't go. So Ramesh felt that you're not allowed to go to a Chanukah party if you're in the year of Avelis. However, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita seems to be chaylik in his Sefer Kovetz Halachos. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says like this in Halichos Shlomo. Rav Shlomo Zalman says, Avelim b'toich yud beis chodesh, someone in mourning during the year of Avelos, mutarim l'shtatif besibah mishpachtis. He's allowed to go to a family Chanukah party. Shenoigim larach midei shana l'kavod Chanukah. It's fine because it's considered a mitzvah. It's considered a sudas mitzvah. He follows the view that these are mitzvahs, and it's not a personal joyous occasion, it's for the mitzvah, and therefore he feels that it's completely fine. So Rabbi Olbaum was asked about this, so Rabbi Olbaum's approach in Chukei Chaim is basically like this. If you can avoid it, avoid it. If you need to go, you can go. That's basically what you're going to do with these type of situations. Ramesh is against it, Rosh Zalman's fine with it. So, if you could avoid it, of course avoid it. So that's what I would tell you, that's why to me, exactly, that's the difference. A family Chanukah party you may not be able to get out of, so you should go. A friend's Chanukah party, you probably can't get out of it, so avoid it. But I would also say like this, if you have someone you also have to have an halach, you have to have seichel, and that's how you have someone who's going through the year of Avelis, and they're depressed, and they need this. So then fine, it's fine. You have what's her line. Now the last part of this shaila is a teacher. If a teacher has a Chanukah party in their school, that Rabbi Olbaum says beferish and Chukei Chaim, that he says beferish is fine. That's not a Chanukah party. That's part of your job. You're a teacher. You got to throw a party. That's part of your job. That's not a simchatik of Chanukah party. That he felt is fine. Try not to sing and dance, but that he felt is completely fine. So that would be the halacha for a Chanukah party. If your family's having a Chanukah party and it's important for you to go, you definitely can go. Again, I wouldn't dance. I can't imagine dancing at a family Chanukah party. But okay, if that's what they do, there's no simcha for me. I can go to that. There's no simcha. Huh?
The reverse on the student. If the student is an available.
So that they bring down that, and Rosh Shlomo Zalman was lenient more for Sfardim than for Ashkenazim, because in this area of Avelis, Sfardim are a little more lenient. But again, if need be, if the kid needs it, again, the kid's in Avelis. You understand? This is not an area where you should have that much chumrah on him. We try to be a little more lenient when it comes to Avelis than other areas. Okay, so moving right along, I have 3 other shilas that I wanted to touch on, and then I'm happy to take any shilas. You know what? I'll do the more random one first. That's not relevant. I mean, not relevant. I mentioned it this morning in the end of Daf, and then I'll come into the 2 very, very practical ones. There's a concept that a lot of people don't know about. There's a Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch writes in Aruch Chaim, Simin Kuf Chav Ches Sif Lamed Hey. Now, the Shulchan Aruch writes like this: Kohen shaharag hasanefesh. If a kohen killed somebody, afilu b'shogeg, even accidentally. So if a kohen took someone's life by accident, lo yisas kapav, he's not allowed to dochen. That's it. He's out. And it's based on the Gemara, that the Gemara says the hands of someone that took someone's life cannot bless the Jewish people. Okay, so if a kohen killed someone even accidentally, he cannot dochen anymore. And here's the stringency of Sfardim over Ashkenazim. Afilu also tshuva. Tshuva doesn't help. Meaning, so if you have someone that killed someone accidentally, and he feels broken about it, and he's crying, and he went to jail, and all these things, and he has remorse, he can never dochen. That's for Sfardim. Ashkenazim hold v'yeshar masa tshuva noisa kapav. The Rambam says no, he could do tshuva. If he does tshuva, of course he does tshuva. He has to do tshuva. But if he does tshuva, he can go back to blessing the Jewish people. That's from the Ramah. V'yesh lahakal abali tshuva shloi linol delis b'fneihem. And the Ramah says it's a good thing. You never want to de-incentivize tshuva. You want to incentivize tshuva. So if someone knows that if he does tshuva, he still can't bless the Jewish people, he's not going to do tshuva. So do tshuva. So that's an area where we're more strict by Sfardim than by Ashkenazim. Now the reason why this is Negeya is Rav Avadia had a tshuva. Rav Avadia Yosef has a tshuva, which I'm not going to go through the tshuva right now, because again, it's not very relevant. I'll tell you why it came up. It came up after Daf this morning. Rav Avadia had a tshuva. What if a kohen was driving drunk, and he got into a car, he killed somebody? So for Ashkenazim, it's not relevant if he does tshuva. I'd like to think that the person will do tshuva if he took someone's life. He does tshuva, he can bless the Jewish people again. Sfardim, they can't. So now you have to get into the category. Is it shogeg? Is it mazid? Is it ones? What if you're driving the speed limit and God forbid a kid jumps out in front of a car? You did nothing wrong. What if you ran a red? What if you were drunk? And these are all details that Rav Avadia goes through in a tshuva. Again, not for now. Hopefully it should never be relevant. But the tshuva that someone did ask is, what happens if a soldier killed an enemy? So does that mean that a soldier who took an enemy's life can't bless the Jewish people for Sfardim? So the answer is, of course not. There's a tshuva from Rav Moshe and Rav Avadia. So Rav Moshe has a tshuva where Rav Moshe was talking about, I think we were talking about this morning, Rav Moshe was talking about the Russian army. Rav Moshe was talking about the fact that, I think this is during World War I, that there were Jews that were drafted against their will into the Russian army, and they were fighting against the other side, and they were killing other people. And those other people could have been Jews also, right? Rav Moshe says they could still bless the Jewish people. Why? Because he says this is not murder that's a choice. They were drafted by the army against their will. They had to. So it's an onus. It was against their will. If you kill someone against your will, that you could do, that you could bless. Rav Avadia says, what about a soldier in the Israeli army? So Rav Avadia says, you don't need that. Rav Moshe was addressing a situation where you're potentially killing a Jew, and you're killing someone that's, maybe they're shooting at you, maybe not, whatever. Then you say stuck. Rav Avadia says, if an Israeli soldier is protecting the Jewish people and protecting his country, and he's dealing with enemies that are trying to kill him, the halacha is very clear that if someone attempts to kill you, harshkem lahagecha, you have a mitzvah to kill him. So to God forbid, so he says they're doing a mitzvah, and therefore it's absolutely no halachic problem. There's no shaila. The shaila was only other situations, but for this there would be zero shaila at all. They would be allowed to bless the Jewish people without a question. That's what Ravadi says. I just came up this morning, so I'll mention it. But like I said, it's not a concern. All right, done with that. Okay, the last two shailas I wanted to deal with is like this. The first shaila is a little more simple, and that is like this. I've mentioned this in the past that there's a misconception that people have that when it comes to tevilas kalim, right? When you buy a new vessel, you dip it in the mikveh. Similar to conversion, someone goes from non-Jew to Jew, dip in the mikveh. So to food vessels, to go from non-Jewish ownership to Jewish ownership, you dip in the mikveh. So there's a misconception that people have that you could use it once before. It's not true. It's completely made up. You can't buy a frying pan from the store and say, like, I'm just going to use it once and then I'll dip it in the mikveh. It's completely made up. And where does it come from? All misconceptions have some level of truth. I mean, it's all ignorant application. There's an element of truth. The element of truth is that disposable items, according to most poskim, you don't have to tevilah. That's because they're not considered vessels. Like Rav Moshe had a shita, right? If you go to take a 9x13 disposable pan, you don't have to dip that into the mikveh. Why? Because it's disposable. It's one-time use. It's in Hebrew, those items are called chad pa'ami. They're called one-time use. So people think like, oh, one-time use is okay. No. The fundamental difference is one-time use vessels are not vessels in halacha. This is a frying pan. It's a vessel. You can't use it once. So, yeah. Oh, so it happens to be, I'll mention that as an aside. So Rav Moshe Shita, there were poskim who held that way. There were poskim who held that if you take a disposable item and you reuse it, you have to tevilah it. I will tell you Rav Moshe Shita. I always followed Rav Moshe Shita. Rav Moshe Shita was, you take a Snapple bottle, again, they don't have Snapple bottles anymore that are glass, now they're plastic, but you take a schnapps bottle, okay? Rav Moshe Shita is that when you buy a Snapple bottle or a schnapps bottle, right, everyone agrees you could empty the content, you could drink it, according to most opinions, you could drink it, right? And then it's done. That's a disposable, not that the material is disposable, but that the normal usage, when you're buying it, you're not buying really the bottle, you're really buying the contents, and the bottles are just like sort of shipping methods. They're not really significant from your perspective or from halachic perspective. Rav Moshe Shita was that if you want to reuse it, you can. Why? Again, there are poskim who disagree, but Rav Moshe said the reason why you can is because really the first time it's considered disposable, it's insignificant. What gives it significance is your decision. Then it's considered a vessel that's made by a Jew. That's what he said, right? If a vessel is made by a Jew, it doesn't need tevilas kalim. It's only when it's made by a non-Jew. So this glass is really deemed insignificant because it's meant to be thrown out by the manufacturer and by the person who buys it. So it's considered like the shell of a nut. It's not significant. The main contents are the only thing that's significant. What gives it now significance, what makes it a vessel, is your desire to reuse it. So your desire to reuse it gives it significance. So now it's made by a Jew. That's Rav Moshe Shita. That's okay. That's a Shita. See, here's the shayla like I asked. You have a vessel. It was a dish. They wanted to put cookies and make like a platter. It was before Shabbos, so you got to dip it in the mikveh. Problem is they didn't have time. So they said, here's what I'll do. I'll put down like a silver foil, not a silver foil, like a paper, like a doily paper. I'll put it down so that the cookies don't touch the vessel. No. So here's the shita. Let me read you a few lines. This is from a Sefer Psakim B'Tshuvah. It's based on Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Tshuvas Mincha Shlomo Chelik Beis Simin Samach Vav Ois Hey. I say this because there are people who listen. They should have the marmakams. So Rav Shlomo Zalman was asked this shayla, and Rav Shlomo Zalman said as follows: Kli hametzupa b'davar dak k'goymet shemeniach ben amachal lekli nir kesef or nir afia eino nechshav hefsa kli ninzeh v'akli ton tevilah. Rav Shlomo Zalman basically says like this: if you have a vessel that you put down just a piece of silver foil, that's not considered a separation. The silver foil is insignificant and it's batel to the kli. And therefore, that is not an eitzah. But that's where you're trying to cover the vessel. Covering the vessel. Now, because one of the halachos that I forgot to mention is the Ramah in Siman Yeridea, Siman Kuf Chaf, Sif Dalid writes, it's called tripodish. Tripodish was basically the burners on top of the oven. You don't have to dip the burners on top of the oven, on top of the stovetop in the mikveh. Why? Because it never comes in contact with food. You always put the pots on top. Really, that's the overwhelming majority of cases. So they said, okay, I'll just put down silver foil. The answer is no. Silver foil is not of a separation. But if I put food in a box on the dish, then it's fine. Meaning, if I have a glass dish and I want to put a thing of cookies and I just put like a little doily down, that doesn't help. But if I take Oreos in the box and I put it down, then it's fine because then they're in a vessel on the plate as opposed to a piece of silver foil, which is insignificant. So if you take Kit Kats, having a weird party, and you're passing around a tray of just Kit Kats, you don't have to tevilah it because each one is in its own encased vessel. The wrapper of a Kit Kat is tiny thin, and it might be the same thickness as silver foil. The answer is it's not a matter of the thickness; it's a matter of the tsura of how it's being formed. When you're trying to block the dish, that doesn't help. If the items are in their own vessel, then it's deemed a separation. Then you don't have to tevilah it. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that halacha. The last halacha that I want to mention, it might take me a few more minutes to clarify, and then I'm happy to, it's always hard for me to know how long things take because I'm sitting in my basement just thinking and looking at notes and questions. The question that I had like this, so I once gave a shiur, this is years ago. I remember I gave a shiur, this is like in the old place, probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I mentioned I wanted to pick an example of something that's just usher on Shabbos, just like universally like a no-go on Shabbos. So I said, like brushing your teeth. And I remember I got like some weird looks at the table. So I was like, why is everyone looking at me? And they were like, you can't brush your teeth? So I was like, of course not. See, I was raised in the yeshiva world, and I'll explain why. I'll go through this in a moment. In the yeshiva world and in the more right-wing, ultra-Orthodox world, brushing your teeth on Shabbos is mamish, like you don't do it. If my mother saw me brushing my teeth on Shabbos, what are you doing? In my yeshiva, if you brush your teeth, you go to the Rosh Yeshiva. There were two poskim who were lenient, Rav Avad Yosef and Rav Soloveitchik. So it happened to be at that shiur, it was all why you guys inspired them. So they were all just looking at me like, what are you talking about? Of course you can brush your teeth. So I just want to clarify, because someone asked me a few days ago, what is the deal of brushing your teeth on Shabbos? Let me take just a few moments to work through. Let's start with the first thing, toothpaste. Okay? You have the brush. I'll tell you like this, to take a toothbrush that's dry with nothing on it, no wet, and just put it on your teeth, that's fine. No one will have an objection to that. But you want to put toothpaste on. So Rav Moshe Feinstein, in Orach Chaim and Siman Kuf Yud Beis and Kuf Chaf Beis, Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked about this, and he said, you're not talking about toothpaste, because it's of course aser. The iser is mimareach. Mimachik is, there's a biblical prohibition of taking like a hard wax and basically adding it to a layer of the floor. Like waxing the floor is a biblical prohibition. The rabbis extended it to anything that's thick. Any thick lotion or any thick shampoos or any thick creams is rabbinically forbidden. So Rav Moshe says you're taking a paste and it's thick and you're spreading it on your teeth. That's a rabbinic prohibition. It wasn't just Rav Moshe, it was the Tzitz Eliezer and it was the Shevet HaLevi, v'chule. Rav Avadia was Mekel, and so was Rav Soloveitchik. Rav Soloveitchik is in Nefesh Harav, and Rav Avadia is in Yabi Yomer. Why was Rav Avadia Mekel? It's very interesting. Rav Avadia says there's a shita of the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram says that if someone spits phlegm on the floor, you could rub it on a dirt floor. You could rub it so that it's not visible. Spread it out. So he says, so why isn't it a problem of mimareach? So says the Magen Avram, mimareach only applies when you want to add another layer. But when you're trying to get rid of it, then it's not a problem. Meaning, if I want to add a layer to the floor of a new substance and I want it to be there, that's the issue. But Rav Avadia says, when it comes to toothpaste, you don't want the paste to stay on your teeth. You want to rub it across your teeth and then rinse it away. So he feels that that's considered similar to spit and to saliva, that it would be okay. Now, first of all, you could say that there's a difference between the two, that saliva you completely want to get rid of and you have no desire for it to stay. Over here, you want it to stay for a moment and then, okay, fine. But that's Rav Avadia's opinion, and Rav Soloveitchik felt the same way. Now, by the way, according to this, I would not do this without asking a shayla. Please ask a shayla, because I could tell you, like I said, I would never use toothpaste on Shabbos. Like, to me, it would be It would be like I feel like a really, really wrong thing to do just based on how I was raised, because I always followed Rav Moshe in this. There were poskim who felt that if you take cream and you rub it into your hand to the point where it gets like, it doesn't stay on top, it gets completely like rubbed in, according to Rav Avadi, it might be okay. You have to ask a shaila. Again, you got to ask someone who's a Rav Avadi guy. I happen to have someone in the neighborhood. Rav Gabi Elbaz is a Baki in Rav Avadi's Shitas. I'll give you his number. You could talk to him. I would also think, potentially, I don't know, and you got to ask someone who holds like Rav Avadia and who follows the Soloveitchik. I would assume that they would probably be okay with using shampoo on Shabbos. Right, I don't use shampoo. I use liquidy shampoo. I'd have to liquidify it to the point where it spreads on its own, so that it's right. The kosher toothpaste, the way if you want Ramosha to be okay with toothpaste, is you have to make it not Ramosha, because Ramosha was against liquid soap also. But if you want the other poskim to be okay with toothpaste, they sell this kosher toothpaste. It's basically liquid. It's so liquid that if it hits the table, it spreads. It doesn't work because you put it on a toothbrush. It just. So it's basically making it liquid. So then it's not a problem mareich anymore. Mareich is only for something that's a little thicker. I would assume, I could be wrong, I don't see why, it sounds like an out there theory, I would look at shampoo as toothpaste of the hair. That's how I would look at toothpaste of the hair. I don't see why it should be much of a difference. You're rubbing it and then you're rinsing it off. It makes bubbles, that makes bubbles, this makes bubbles. I don't know. I don't use either. I think they're both usher. But ask someone who holds like Rav Soloveitchik or is a Rav Shechter Talmud. I don't know what Rav Shechter would say. I probably should have researched what Rav Shechter says about shampoo because he probably has his opinion out there. But yeah, that we'll put aside. The point is, so the toothpaste shaila is Rav Moshe is against it. Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Avadia are okay with it. Again, the svaras behind are sort of not as important. Those are the shitas. So let's put the toothpaste aside.
Isn't there an issue also?
This one. So the first one is the toothpaste, and that's the problem in Mareach. So let's say, okay, you want to use, you'll be makel or you want to be machmer. So I just want to use a toothbrush, but I want to rinse the toothbrush. I want to wash the toothbrush. Rav Moshe says that's also aser. Why? It's called schita. Schita means squeezing. Now, generally when you squeeze, you have water that's absorbed like in a t-shirt and you squeeze it out. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Over here, the water is not absorbed in the bristles, but because the bristles are so compact, it's called kanus b'soicha, that it's like you're squeezing it from between the bristles. And that's also rabbinically not allowed. So that's why when they sell in the stores, they sell a toothbrush kit. It's liquidy toothpaste, and the toothbrush has like 6 rubber giant bristles. It's like a Dr. Seuss version. It does almost nothing. That's if you want to go like Rav Moshe. So that's a schita. That's a problem of schita. Rav Avadia is lenient on that as well because Rav Avadia says schita is only rabbinic. And over here, you don't really intend to squeeze it out. It's davar she'ein mischaven. So, according to many poskim, you're lenient. Rav Shlomo Zalman questioned it because Rav Shlomo Zalman said, why are you not mechaven? Of course you want it to be squeezed out. You want to add, that's part of brushing your teeth, is you have the liquid from in between the bristles with the toothbrush and it makes a paste. And wow, okay. But Rav Avadia is mekel, Rav Moshe is machmer. Last part of the shaila. So, you basically have 2 approaches of how to brush your teeth. Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Avadia basically hold you could do regular. Rav Moshe holds you have to use a dry toothbrush. Can't use any toothpaste and you can't rinse it before. So let's say you did your dry toothbrush. You're shevish, you did your dry toothbrush.
Get wet in your mouth.
Yeah, but that they feel is insignificant, that they're not machmer about. So you did that. So here's the question. I'd like to rinse it off afterwards. That is a problem. It seems to be that's an issue according to the overwhelming majority of Paiskim. Rav Avadia was even machmer about that. Rabbi Tzina Abba Shaul was machmer about that because they said that's called hachana, right? If you're done, you're only going to brush your teeth once. It's Shabbos morning, you're not going to brush your teeth again until after Shabbos. So you're rinsing it off to make sure that it's clean for next time. That's hachana. That's preparing for next time. You're not allowed to be make a meichen on Shabbos. That's preparing from Shabbos for weekday. So I would say this. So if you want to brush your teeth, you follow Rav Soloveitchik, fine. You follow Rav Avadia, fine. Okay, shine. But you should not be rinsing it off afterwards. I want to make one point also clear, because I feel like I might as well, because I know people that are going to listen to this, they know who whatever. If you're going to follow Rav Soloveitchik, then you better be like a YU guy. Like, I'm coming across a lot of people that are just like, they pick stuff. I'm not into that. You can't just, like, I think I told you this story once, that there was a lady, I've seen this thing where people will just like start picking things. If you have your mesibah, listen, a common thing nowadays I've seen is people waiting 3 hours after milchik and fleshik. Now, there are legitimate sources that do wait 3 hours, German Jews. But I've noticed that there's some people that are like, my family's from Poland. So I'm like, so why are we waiting? I don't know. I think that people should, pick Hanhaga of Klal Yisrael. In America, the Hanhaga, I could tell you, outside of the YU world and outside of the Sephardi world, the Hanhaga is not to brush your teeth. I can tell you right now. I'm just telling you, I feel confident about that. I don't know, I can tell you, in America, you go to the average yeshiva, they don't do that. So you want to do it? Okay, fine. But if you're going to follow Rav Soloveitchik, I think you should probably be a little consistent. Don't just find kulas. You understand? Just like, I find this kula and I find that kula. Try to be consistent. Like people ask me a lot when it comes to like, you send me a lot of things. I have to get back to you about like what davening. I'll tell you like this. The simple answer: follow your nusach. If you have a shaila of what do I say, follow your nusach. Be consistent. Do I say this bracha? Do I say that? Follow your nusach. If you daven nusach Ashkenaz, follow nusach Ashkenaz. Sfard, Eidat Mizrach, Tilas Hashem. Just follow just be a little consistent. I'm just noticing, a fraction of people, they'll be like, I do this and I do that. I'm like, okay, let's just try to pick a lane. It's hard. I know I myself, I'm a little confused. And you know what? If you're not sure, probably best to be a little more machmer and not to pick a more individualized shita that is not necessarily part of the mainstream approach. I'm not saying that true when it comes to toothpaste, but just in general, just if you're not sure, go with the average person, right? Let's say someone comes to you, they're not sure, do they wait 6 hours or 3? I could tell you, the overwhelming majority of people that don't come from Germany and don't come from Holland wait 6 hours. So you should probably wait 6 hours. That's what I would say. Again, I don't know. I could be wrong. I just say, if you're not sure, unless your family comes from that, if your family is just a little more modern Orthodox, they just don't want to wait 6 hours. I don't think that's as legitimate. I think you should wait 6 hours unless that's your Messiah. I just think that there's like a little bit of a picking and choosing. Just try to be consistent. Every shita, you'll get your kulas, you'll get your chumras. It's a little bit of a risk. Svardim get their kulas, they get their chumras. Ashkenazim also. Just try to be consistent, and then it'll kind of avoid all these problems. By the way, it's a very good point that liquid soap, for it to be okay, Ramosha was against liquid soap, but if you want it to be okay with liquid soap, Rav Belsky said that it has to be that it hits the table and spreads. That is the barometer. That's the geder hadvarim. If it's too thick, then it would be an issue. And if you have liquid soap, just put it in your hand and dilute it, and that would avoid that problem.